Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Cool. All right. So one of the things that I was just saying is that I'm going to re-upload this later in a more polished format where I cut out all the crap at the beginning and end like that, where you can't hear me. So that's a nice twist of fate there. Okay, so basically, let's start from the beginning. All right. Hey, Wargamers. So basically, if you are... Okay, hold on. I need to fix the Yeti. It is fixed. Okay. Hey, Wargamers. So I have been looking at the new FAQ here and just wanted to kind of get a sense of some of the big things and little things that are in it, particularly from the perspective of a Tau player. So if you're watching this live, make sure you're in chat. Let me know what you think of these things as we go along. I have my gut impressions of a few of these things, but really I want to have a discussion with you guys and figure out what this really means for us. And of course, only time will tell, but there are a few, snap judgments we can make and things like that. We can jump to conclusions together on this. So, okay. So I'm just looking at the FAQ. Again, if you haven't seen this, it's on the Warhammer community site, warhammercommunity.com/FAQs. And yeah, they basically gave us an update for everything except for the Imperial Index Xenos. I can't find it. I tried a bunch of different ways. I just don't see it on there. They have the other Imperial Armor indices FAQ'd on there, but they don't have it for Imperial Armor Index Xenos, as far as I can tell. Guys watching, if you see it, put it in the chat so I can take a look at that. But that means that we don't have any updates on things like the Tiger Shark or the Ivara, which are two really important things for the Tau right now in terms of army composition. So if we're just looking at kind of the big FAQ statement, there's a few things that happened here. If I can find it. Okay. So one of the things that they did is they changed how the Deep Strike beta rule actually works. They said that originally they had changed it so that you can only Deep Strike in your deployment zone turn 1, and now they think that that's kind of ridiculous. Like, why can you only deploy in your deployment zone turn 1 instead of Deep Strike anywhere? So they're like, all right, we're just going to skip all that. You can't Deep Strike anywhere until turn 2. This is not that big of a deal for us because a lot of the things that we would be concerned about Deep Striking, particularly drones, turn 1 or something like that, are going to be already, pigeonholed to Deep Strike in turn 2 anyway. The one exception here is for defensive deployments. Like, you could put crisis suits in Deep Strike and then deploy them turn 1 in your deployment zone anyway, just to keep them alive that extra turn, potentially. So you do sacrifice that, but overall, I don't see a huge difference here compared to what we are already dealing with. It just means that, yes, we have to have things on the board turn 1 if we are going to have them in our deployment zone. We can't have drones or crisis suits just stay in Manta Reserve until our turn 1 and then put them down just as we would have anyway. That gives us a little less of a tactical advantage during deployment, but overall, not that big of a deal, I don't think. Let's see. What else did they do in the big FAQ? That was really the big thing here. Oh, right. No, there was another big thing, right? The way that they changed how CP regeneration works. Basically, you can only regenerate 1 CP per turn. So whether that's from something like a Pure Tide Engram Neurochip or some other relic, other special rule things like that, you can only regenerate 1 CP per turn. This is a big deal for things like knights that are using, guard batteries to regenerate CP like crazy. On that same note, Imperial Knights got a few different stratagems bumped up to 3 CP, so things are more expensive. So, you know, the battery isn't as valuable as it used to be, which is good. I wish they would have addressed this in a little bit more sophisticated way, but it seems like this is at least a step in the right direction. But yeah, so they changed CP regeneration to only happen once per turn. So you can only get one, or right, not per turn, per battle round. Sorry. Thank you guys. Per battle round. So that really limits the amount of CP that you can get back. It makes the Pure Tide Engram Neurochip less valuable, although honestly, you know, on average, I would maybe get 1 CP back per battle round anyway. So it's probably not a huge difference for us, but for things like Guard, where you could pull CP left and right, you know, it probably makes a really big difference for them. Yeah. So, yes. And then the third big difference is, third big difference. Let me get back in here. I was reading the reading the comments. Oh, right. Third big difference is the introduction of a new stratagem. It's a new universal stratagem. Anyone can use it, with the exception that you have to be going second. If you do not have the first turn, then you have access to this new stratagem called Prepared Positions. And that basically treats all your units as being in cover turn 1. So if you're playing Dalith, this is going to be really redundant for you, and you don't have to worry about this. But for, you know, any other Tau armies or pretty much any other army, this is going to be a valuable thing if you're going second. It costs 2 CP, which is good. If it costs 1 CP, I mean, that just seems really low for this ability, and 3 CP seems potentially more expensive, but definitely should be at least 2 CP. So 2 or 3 CP, I think, makes sense for this. And if they are in your deployment zone, they count as being in cover. So whether or not they're deployed in cover, you can spend 2 CP and make your entire army count as being in cover, as long as they're in your deployment zone. So this wouldn't apply for things like Pathfinders or Ghost Keels or Stealth Suits. Anything that is going to be able to move outside your deployment zone turn 1 isn't, or, you know, at the beginning of the game or before turn 1, is not going to benefit from this. Unless, well, hold on. Is that true? It says use this stratagem at the start of the first battle round before the turn begins. Yeah, so it's still in the first battle round. So definitely things like Pathfinders that get their scout move, that happens before this. So they would not count as being in cover. But yes. But that has a few implications for Tau in terms of, well, now we're actually getting a little bit more value out of Marker Lights potentially in turn 1. One of the things about Marker Lights, right, is that especially if you're bringing them in Pathfinders or drones, they're going to die very quickly. And so you want to have them, you're going to get more value out of them earlier in the game than later in the game. And so this kind of emphasizes that, you know, if you have Pathfinders and they're not long for this world, at least you're going to be able to counteract this type of stratagem potentially. And it's 2 CP, so it drains their CP pool a non-negligible amount. And potentially you can totally, you know, ignore it with Marker Lights. So you only need 3 Marker Lights to ignore cover on a unit. Really not a problem, especially if you want to spend your own CP and do uplinked Marker Light. You can you know, do that the majority of the time, right? So you're going to add D3 Marker Lights to any one Marker Light hit. D3, you have a 66.7% chance of getting a 2 or a 3 on that, and that's what you need in order to, you know, get to ignoring cover. So really not a huge deal if you're bringing Marker Lights. If you aren't bringing Marker Lights, that really hurts really hurts your output, especially on units that are not going to be relying on invulnerable saves or something like that, right? So even if we're bringing a Riptide and we have advanced targeting on it -2, that's basically negating the advanced targeting for that first turn, which sucks, right? That's not ideal, and so yeah, I would rather that not be the case. But if they're spending 2 CP and I have marker lights, I have a way of getting around that. I think it's a lot more hurtful for other shooting armies like Eldar, like Guard. It's going to be a lot harder for them than it is for us because we do have access to marker lights. Yeah, if you're not bringing marker lights, why would you play Tile? Well, there are lots of different army compositions out there, and I think that marker lights are pretty much a staple at this point. There have been iterations of the army in the past that have not had marker lights and have done well, but I think right now, as far as having Cadre Fire Blades and having Firesight Marksmen, most armies are going to have enough marker lights to deal with this on turn 1, so it's not a big deal. Cool. All right, so those are guys in chat, gals in chat. If I missed something in the big FAQ, let me know. But I think those are like the 3 big things that happened in the main FAQ. There's a few things in the actual Tau FAQ that I want to talk about as well that I think are pretty important. Okay. All right, so automated repair system for the data card, there was a typo. It just reconciles that. So if you're looking at the card and looking at the book, they were different. Now they are the same. They're the book version. So just keep that in mind if you ever run into a problem. And then there's a question about how Saviour Protocols works. It works exactly the way that we've said it worked. So this is kind of a confusing question. I'm not sure why this question needed to be asked, because they explained it exactly the way that I and others have explained it, where you allocate the wound, or the wound is taken by the unit. You then roll your 2 up and then allocate it to the drone via mortal wound, and it's good. Basically, if you haven't seen my video on this, I actually have 2. Watch either of them. The process is as we describe it. The big change here is that for the purposes of Saviour Protocols, what exactly constitutes an attack? And this is something that people have argued about in the past, and it turns out that they are much more conservative in their definition of an attack than I had anticipated, and a lot of other people have anticipated. So in this context, it is an attack made with a ranged or melee weapon, not a psychic power. So good game. Basically, we can't use this against Smite. We can't use this against Powers of the Satan. We can't use it against any psychic power at all. So that kind of sucks. That's pretty bad in terms of, we didn't have any type of psychic defense before. We don't have the ability to deny the witch or anything like that. I was hoping that might be something that would come with Farsight Enclave Seps. Didn't happen. And now we don't even have drones. Yes, it kind of makes sense. And if you conceptualize psychic powers as being absent of a physical manifestation, it makes sense that drones would not be able to intercept that. But if you're thinking about psychic powers manifesting some sort of tangible construct, like, the permanent spells in Age of Sigmar or something like that, it totally makes sense that drones would be able to jump in front of that. But so like lightning or some sort of magical arcane bolt or something like that, or like a black hole, it makes sense that drone would be able to jump in front of that and eat the damage for your Riptide, for example. But if you think about it purely as something happening in the warp or subspace, or however you want to think of that, then it doesn't make sense. And so Games Workshop has clearly gone with that interpretation, and that you can't use Saviour protocols to defend against Smite. And as I've been saying, I think that sucks. I think that hurts a lot, especially against armies that are going to be producing a lot of mortal wounds that way. A lot of armies rely on that to do damage. Tyranids, for example, are going to do a lot of damage with psychic powers, and especially if we're talking about Hive Tyrants. And we have no defense against that, none whatsoever. So I'm not really upset about this or anything. I just think that it's a big chink in our armor that probably is unfair compared to some of the chinks that get into other people's armor. So it's a weakness now that we have that we didn't have before, and we need to adapt to deal with it. Basically, just means shoot the crap out of the psychers if you can, which was always the strategy. So I'm not really sure what else to do other than what I've been doing in the past. But yeah, yep, right, yeah. So yeah, put the drones in front. Make sure that your most valuable targets are not the nearest. That's a really good point, and something that essentially is, well, essential now. We actually have to have the drones in front of our valuable units, kind of like we used to have in, what is it, 4th edition, 5th edition. I think there used to be iteration of the drone rules that meant that they had to be in front of the unit or something like that. So yeah, basically, I guess that is the solution, is just have your drones in front. But of course that opens up more problems in terms of having to have your drones, especially if we're deep striking a unit of crisis suits in. Now I have to put my drones in a certain position, and that makes it harder to use things like flamers, for example, if we're using a homing beacon. So it adds an extra challenge to it again, and we're still having to deal with it in the other way as well. So yeah, cool. So right. I think that's a really big deal, and something that is going to take some time to get used to, especially in gameplay, is making sure that we're putting drones in front of valuable units in a psyker-heavy environment. Additionally, this means that one unit of drones is going to be less effective at covering multiple units, right? Because I used to be able to have like a Riptide here and a Riptide here, and then a unit of drones, and I could save your protocols either of them. Or, Riptide here, and a unit of drones, behind them, and that would be fine. Or, potentially have the drones in a building next to a Riptide. That was one of my favorite things to do, is have the drones just out of line of sight. They can still offer Saviour protocols, but are shielded from things like bolter fire that would normally prioritize shooting at the drones. And now that's not an option against armies with psychers, so you have to have your drones out in the open, making them vulnerable to fire. So these are all things that we have to consider now and internalize in our strategy. Okay, but that's really the big thing. Oh, they did clarify. They clarified 2 things in the Tau FAQ too. One is no, a long shot pulse rifle is not a pulse rifle. So I've seen this argument pop up a few times recently. I thought it had died long ago, but for some reason recently it kind of popped back up again. I'm glad that they gave us this one-word answer to take care of that question. But yeah, hopefully you knew that a long shot pulse rifle is not a pulse rifle. The other one is that the other clarification that they give us is that if you use Master of War, it applies to the units that are around the commander at the time that it is used. It's not like a persistent bubble that units can move in and out of. It's a one-time pulse. So you use it, it affects the units around the commander at that instant, and then they have that benefit. But if you move into range of a commander, it doesn't they don't gain the ability because of that. So again, hopefully that's how you've been playing it. But if that wasn't how you were playing it, now you know, don't do that. Yeah. So happy with those clarifications. They tie up a few loose ends and settle some debates that were still burning in the in the furnace of the internet. But right, cool. The rule book. Oh, in the basic rule book, we had updates about how you allocate shots and attacks and everything like that. And it's essentially the way that you use, like the way that it was explicitly stated in, I think, 6th edition. And that's that you know, if you have multiple weapons or multiple, if you have multiple weapons, you just allocate all of them at once. You don't get to pick and choose as you go. So you have to specify. Okay, my smart missile system is going over here, and my heavy burst cannon is going over here. You don't get to shoot the smart missile systems and then shoot the heavy burst cannon if the smart missile systems didn't kill it or something like that. So that's good. Again, that's how I've always interpreted it. So I'm glad to see that codified. They also address. What is it? They address flying. They basically say that you treat terrain as not being there, which I guess is it doesn't seem like that's actually a difference in the wording. So I'm not super clear on what they're trying to say here. But I think what this means is just that indeed flying is treated as it is in Kill Team, and we'll talk about Kill Team in a second. But that if you are, you know, going up a triangle, you know, if, like we're here and we're going to move up to this point up here, we don't actually measure the hypotenuse of this triangle. We just measure the ground level distance, and that's what you move when you move using the fly keyword. So. They did address that drones that are, you know, part of a different unit are not considered for the rule of 3. So that's good. Clarify that heroic intervention can't be used on your own turn. So you can't avoid charging like that. I thought there was something else here that I was kind of excited about, but I'm not seeing it. Chat. What am I missing? All right, remind me to cut this section out when I re-upload because it's just me sitting here reading the chat. File account. Okay, so. Okay, let's actually, hold on. I have, here's my book. Okay, let's see what the actual, let's look at this more closely. Let's switch, okay. Okay, page 177. Oh. Okay, so currently moving, change the second paragraph to read, Okay, currently it says if the dash sheet for a model says it can fly, it can move across models and terrain as if they were not there. It now says if the dash sheet for a model says it can fly, then during the movement phase, it can move across models and terrain as if they were not there. Oh. Okay, so the question that I have then is, can you trap units with fly in combat? Right? Can you prevent them from hopping out now? So let's look at what oh yeah, you definitely can, because of course you're right, because you move out of combat during the movement phase, so it's not like you're running like in 7th edition, right? So that's okay, so that was still a little bit of 7th edition that crept back into my mind right there. So yeah, not a problem for us to disengage or fall back out of combat using the fly keyword. But it does mean that you can't charge with units with fly and ignore terrain, right? Yeah, because that's the charge phase, not the move phase. So that's actually really good for us, right? Because that means that I can have all my dudes up in top of a ruin and ignoring kind of the shenanigans of taking up space and everything like that. A unit would not be able to make like a 2-inch charge against me if the ruin is 10 inches tall or something, right? They still have to go that vertical distance in the charge phase. Right. Okay. Guys, I thought there was something else that I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure what it was. I think we talked about everything. Moving, unit to shoot with, choosing targets, witch hunter, psychers, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of, okay, yeah, that was it. So whatever. Okay, so the last bit of this that I wanted to talk about is the Kill Team FAQ. Kill Team FAQ, it's the first FAQ for Kill Team, I'm pretty sure, and it has a lot of pretty useful things, right? Like it clarifies a lot of things, but I think for the most part, it brings Kill Team rules in line with 40K rules in a way that makes sense in terms of like, especially if we're looking at particular unit entries for things like shield drones, for example. Shield drones have their 5-up feel no pain now. Marker drones have their stable platform special role. So it brings all of the unit entries into line, I think, with the codices. At least that's true for Tau. And that's good. That means that in Kill Team, you actually have a reason to take shield drones again. And you actually have a reason to take marker drones again. And I think, in particular, that's pretty good. In terms of, we only have so many models, and if you are going to be bringing, like particularly a stealth suit or something, chucking a Pathfinder with a rail rifle, those guys, one of the biggest issues I have with the Pathfinder with rail rifle and Kill Team is that they die immediately, right? You look at them and they die. But if we can put a shield drone next to them, and that shield drone isn't just going to die right away, and you have a 1/3 chance of making it survive, then maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe that's how you just keep those Pathfinders alive. Of course, you're giving up shooting opportunities, and that's too bad. I would like to maintain those shooting abilities, and so maybe gun drones still are the better choice. But for the most part, that's pretty good. Okay. Ba, ba, ba. Cool. All right. So what else do you guys think? Is there anything anybody wants to talk about in the chat? Otherwise, I think we kind of went through everything that's important here. Ba, ba, ba. Cool. All right. Well, if that's the case, then yeah, I'm going to go and actually get ready for the CODEX incursion tomorrow. We have a two-day narrative event here in the Twin Cities that I'm excited to play in tomorrow, and I will bring my camera with and hopefully get some footage from that. Should be really interesting, really exciting, really unique mission design, unique stratagem, stuff like that. Stuff that really gets my brain wheels turning, and I'm pretty excited about it. So I will be doing that tomorrow and have a video about that next week, hopefully. Yeah. But I guess one of the big things is that they have like a fully painted, no BS, no 3-color minimum painting requirements. So you have to have fully painted armies. They they basically have to be beautiful. And I think that's going to be pretty exciting. I've seen a bunch of pictures of armies on Twitter by people that are very good artists, certainly better than I am. And that has me pretty excited to participate. One thing that I'm a little nervous about is just that they have a unique pairing system. It's not based on performance. It's based on social interaction. So basically you pick your opponent, and I don't know how that's going to go because, yeah. So we will make some new friends probably at the CODEX incursion, which will be a good thing. Cool. All right. Oh, Dale, so you're asking why can't we hide drones? We can still hide drones. You can still hide drones in the majority of cases, just in terms of normal shooting. Still hide drones, still works out the same way. The reason why you can't hide drones in some cases is because of psychers. So Saviour protocols has been modified or clarified to only work on shooting or melee attacks, something that comes from a weapon. So if a psyker targets your Riptide, the Riptide has to take it. You can't use Saviour protocols to intercept Smite, for example. And so you have to physically block Smite by being the closest unit to that psyker. And so if you are going to be hiding drones in a building, they cannot be the closest unit because they're not going to be in line of sight, and they are, probably not going to be, they're not going to be closest. So you actually have to physically block a psychic ability using your drones in the movement phase. So that adds some extra complications, both in terms of deployment, but movement and deep striking. So, okay. Cool. I'm going to go then. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And of course, happy wargaming.